Okay, so today we're going to talk about what to do when you see something is wrong with your trees and what you're going to do to go about figuring it all out. We're going to go through the steps so you might take to gather the information that you'll need to come up with a diagnosis, or if you're going to have an expert do it, the information that they're going to need to come up with an answer and hopefully a solution. So today I've got Toso Bozic, arborist extraordinaire, uh, owner of Edmonton-based Yard Whispers, and he's also CEO of ATTS Group. This guy knows trees. Welcome, Toso. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Robert. Thanks
Good, good.
for the
Okay.
invitation.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's get started. So you've noticed something wrong with your tree. Maybe it has some dead parts, some discolored parts, some weird growth, or it doesn't seem as nice as it's been in the past. So Toso, take us through the different stages of collecting information. Where do you start? Do you just dive right into the leaves, get a look there?
No, I usually you don't need to start right away in the leaves. First thing I always look is actually surrounding area. Number one, you have to identify what trees you have, because many
Yep.
folks don't know what trees they have on their properties. So once you figure out what you have as a tree species, you look around, and the surrounding area will tell you way more than just dive in into what's the problem is. So when I said around surrounding area, I always start looking the soil. Soil is most of the time one of the biggest. It's a starting point for the trees to decline. It's related to the roots. If roots do have a problems, then the rest of the trees is going to suffer one way or another in that sense. So you look in the soil, then you look in the position of the trees to the many other features. If you have in backyard, close to the buildings, and any other structure that you have, then look the slope, which is very important in many ways, because if it's southern exposure versus northern exposures as well, and the slope where the water is draining in that sense, is there any depression on the ground that you can see where the water might be standing and creating the problem for your trees as well. So, and then on the last and not least, I look the surrounding trees. Is it only that tree that do have a problem, or all whole trees do have a problem, or is parts of the trees or the whole trees has a problem in that sense? So I usually pause for first 5 minutes going through looking at the surrounding area. One of the very common things where the trouble with trees is the roots. You can see if there is roots on the surface, any damage to the roots that most of the people do, cutting by the grass or cutting the roots in that sense.
Yeah.
So it's surrounding is the first thing before I dive into
Yeah.
any detection of the potential problems.
Yeah, and
In
if
that
you were
sense.
gonna bring an expert in too, you'd want to make sure to have noted has there been any construction or any type of changes in that environment from 1 year or within the last few years? Has there been any changes, right? So
Yeah.
can't just say, well, what's happening right now? You're gathering information, not just the surrounding area, but the surrounding time frame too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
again,
Okay.
and that's also one of the other things when when you identify what tree species you have is also age of the trees.
Hmm. Yep.
There is a huge difference between the young, mediums, mid-size, mid-age and older trees. That is, each of them can sustain or not certain problems that they might inherit. So one of the very common things what I find out, Robert, is that people plant the trees or have a trees on the wrong spot, or they have a good spot but plant the wrong trees. So we have as arborists, when we tell the lots of people is plant the right trees on right spot. Lots of people have a right tree on wrong spot or wrong tree on the right spot in many ways. So that's
Yeah.
a very common thing.
Yeah.
But age is also age is very important
Yep.
when first thing before we even look for any detailed information about trees.
Okay, so we've looked wide, we've gathered that information, gather as much as we can. So now you're starting to look for signs and symptoms and other clues that might be of something that might be causing problems. What are you
Well,
looking at now? When you're looking closer, what do you start looking for?
when I start looking at the closer, it's even is there any dead branches? So what parts of the
Mhm.
trees? Is it the top of the trees? Is it the large branch? Is it in the middle of the trees, or is it trunk, or is it the roots? So then we go to the next level is the parts of the trees I'm looking for. So if it's noticeable just that that are the top of the trees or small branches infected or impacted, then I focus on there before I go any further. But so next step is looking the part of the tree. So and I go to the process of elimination. So if I see there is no any root damage, you right away said that that's okay. Then you go to the trunk and look all along the trunk. Do you see any oozing, any changing the color, any holes, any sawdust, any of those things along the trunk? And then you go to the larger branches. Are those branches are attached properly to the stem or to the trunk or not? Is there anything out of shape that is happening? And then go from there. You look toward to the top and say, okay, is it that these branches are even broken down by the wind or heavy snow or anything like that? So you go to the next level is the parts of the tree. Once you finish the parts of the tree, if it's during the growing season, then next level is the leaves. I go through the whole process of looking the leaves. Is it curling leaves? Is it changing the color of the leaves? Is it they're chewing, lack of the leaves, small, all range of things that is we are looking is the leaves. So as I said, in the process, next thing is looking for the parts of the tree, and I assess every single parts of the tree through my process.
Good. Yeah. Do you need any special tools or anything to do any of this?
Depending, I use the binoculars many times if I have a large trees, and just to look in the top and joints of the branches, any indication, for example, in bronze birch borer, they are usually starts on the top of the trees and they have a small little hole so that I look at, and then I use the magnifying glass, which is extremely important. That tells me a lot. And then sometimes to detect some of the fungi, I use the mallet, rubber mallet, and check the trunk and check the roots is to see if I have any potential disease that is creating the rot in the trees. Many trees are affected by the various fungi and the root rots or trunk rots. So I use the mallet and I kind of tap with the mallet. And every time when I hear a dull sound, that's his indication of generally speaking, of some of the fungi within the trunk or within roots.
Okay.
In this sense, but those are three tools that I use pretty much all the time.
Yeah.
To see if there are any problems with the tree.
And then, I mean, everybody's got a smartphone and a camera now. Taking good pictures. I mean, when in doubt, take some pictures. Some good close-up pictures. Nothing blurry, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's one of the other thing, but also come to identification is not just taking the pictures of the close-up pictures, which is people commonly do. Ones. It's a wide. I always said for every pest problem or any problems with the trees, I always start with the wide pictures, couple of pictures that is looking there, as I said at the beginning.
Yeah, the full yard, the full tree, the full yard, everything I want, because you want to be able to see the slope and all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
so
again, and then a little bit closer up, and if it's really some of the insects that you can really zoom, then you kind of get a close up. But the biggest thing is actually surrounding area that tells me way more. And if you do have some insects problem or disease problems, then you zoom in and make sure that the picture is very sharp, which is very important. Many times today, thanks to the technology, I use actually, matter of fact, instead of photos, people FaceTime or
look at the video. You can video, when you're looking at it, because they can move it around, right?
I can move around, and that's a very common now. Became more and more common practice in many ways, because then you can see right away what's going on.
Okay. Anything else you'd recommend?
Again, the biggest thing is that people really pay attention to the surrounding area before they jump to the conclusion. And also the other thing is that people sometimes get panicky. I have so many situations when people send me photos and it's branch of the tree is brown, And but when they send me the picture of the whole tree, it's a very small little branch that is dead, and the rest of the trees are pretty healthy and alive, or something like that. So it's, you know, most of the time, all the time I said to people, don't panic, and you have to look the whole pictures before you jump in any conclusion.
Yeah, this takes time, right? I mean, while we say we want to gather information, I mean, ultimately this isn't going to be a, you know, oh, it's this and let's find the solution and, you know, 15 minutes later we're done. This is a long process. And so we take your time and gather the information correctly, correct?
Well, and that's one of the things that I always said, Robert, to people. People like to have an instant answer, instant solution, instant everything, because we live in an instant world, unfortunately, sometimes. But it's most of the time is, you know, it takes some time to really figure out. Trees and forest is very complex, living thing, all the time changing. And many times people really don't pay attention until trees are really declining and dead. You know, I always make a little bit fun with the people when they call me, say, Toso, my trees are dead. What do I do? I say, take a chainsaw and cut it and plant a new one. Because why did you call me to tell me that tree is dead? Really doesn't make any helpful things, unless if your trees is dead and you have, of course, concerns for the rest of the trees. Then we can look at that trees and figure out why is the reason for the trees to die. But overall, people have to keep in mind that trees are very resilient, but also living thing and changing all the time.
Yeah, so pay attention to your trees all the time, not just when they are wrong, and then you'll have some basis for comparison. So good advice.
Said,
good.
I give a lots of set to people: walk by, drive by, ride a bike, whatever you want, with the trees, usually from April all the way till November. And then in March, March or April, you look at what winter did to the trees. So each season brings their own challenges and own issues. So during the winter time, you have a frost cracks, you have trees that are dead because the roots are frozen. You have animal damage in the winter time, and on and on. And then comes to April or March and April during the growing season, all the way to the fall. You have a range of the insects and diseases, and the hail and the flooding and the cold and not enough sunlight. So each season brings their own challenges, and observation is actually crucial. And that's what I do. I always go back and say, when was this happen?
Yeah, and if you haven't been paying attention, you can't tell. So, all right, well, good. Well, now we can get out there and pay more attention and gather more information. Thanks very much, Toso.
Yeah, you're welcome, Robert.
Okay.